You've noticed something wrong. That person who always knows exactly what to say, who makes you feel seen one moment, invisible the next, who leaves conversations with you questioning your own memory, your own sanity. You've been taught this is complexity, nuance, the messiness of human relationship. You've been taught wrong. Machiavelli understood what modern psychology refuses to admit. Empathy isn't just a virtue. In the hands of certain people, it becomes a weapon. Your capacity to trust, to assume good faith, to give second chances, these aren't strengths in their eyes. They are exploitable vulnerabilities. This isn't about becoming cynical. This is about seeing the game board while others see only friendly faces. The disturbing truth: toxic people don't just stumble into manipulation, they architect it, systematically, deliberately, with principles refined over centuries, and they win because you don't know the rules. Let me show you what you've been missing. The charm feels calculated because it is. Notice how their warmth arrives with perfect timing, when you're vulnerable, when you're useful, when you're watching. Notice how it vanishes just as precisely. This isn't inconsistency, this is calibration. The conversations leave you questioning yourself by design. You walk away from interactions feeling vaguely wrong, unable to pinpoint why. They agreed with you, yet you feel diminished. They complimented you, yet you feel inadequate. This cognitive dissonance isn't accidental, it's engineered. The strategic kindness comes with invisible price tags. That favor they did unasked, you'll discover its cost later, always at the moment of maximum leverage. That secret they kept, it becomes currency when needed. That support they offered, it established a debt you never agreed to carry. You felt this. The creeping sense that something operates beneath the surface of normal human interaction. The suspicion that you're playing checkers while someone else plays chess. You're right. Here's what happens when you don't see the game being played. You blame yourself. You try harder, you give more, you accept less, you normalize treatment that should trigger alarm. You become the architect of your own exploitation, convinced that your empathy will eventually be reciprocated, your patience rewarded, your loyalty honored. It won't, because while you're trusting them, they're studying you. Your triggers, your boundaries, your breaking points, your price. Every interaction is reconnaissance. Every vulnerability you share becomes ammunition. Every time you forgive, you're teaching them the exact threshold of what you'll tolerate. And they're taking notes. Machiavelli stated it with surgical precision. It is unnecessary to have all good qualities, but very necessary to appear to have them. Read that again, slower. He didn't say be good, he said appear good. The distinction isn't semantic, it's strategic. The toxic personality understands what the genuine person doesn't. Perception is reality in human social dynamics. Actual virtue requires consistency, sacrifice, internal alignment. Apparent virtue requires only performance, and performance is infinitely easier to maintain than character. This is impression management weaponized. Watch how they operate. In public, in groups, in moments of visibility, they radiate integrity. They speak the language of values. They position themselves as reasonable, measured, morally centered. They're the first to condemn others' ethical lapses, the quickest to signal virtue. This isn't hypocrisy, this is camouflage. The psychological mechanism is deliberate self-presentation. They've learned that humans make rapid judgments based on surface signals, warmth, confidence, moral clarity. So they manufacture these signals with precision, knowing most people won't look deeper, can't look deeper, don't have the framework to distinguish performance from reality. In private, in moments without witnesses, in relationships where they hold power, the mask slips. Not completely, never completely, but enough. The cruelty becomes casual, the manipulation becomes explicit, the contempt becomes visible, and when you notice, when you point it out, they have the perfect defense, their public reputation. That doesn't sound like them. They've always been so kind to me. You must have misunderstood. The mask becomes their alibi. Here's your defense protocol. Watch actions over extended time, not words in the moment. Anyone can perform virtue for an audience. Anyone can say the right thing when it costs nothing. The question isn't what they do when people are watching. It's what they do when they think no one is. Track patterns, not incidents. Consistency, not intensity. What do they do when helping you conflicts with helping themselves? What happens when your needs compete with their image? Where do they direct cruelty when they're certain it won't be witnessed? The mask always slips. Your job is to be watching when it does. Machiavelli's next principle cuts deeper. Benefits should be granted little by little, so they may be better enjoyed. This sounds almost benevolent. It isn't. This is the psychology of intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful behavior control mechanism ever discovered. Slot machines use it. Abusive relationships run on it. Toxic people have mastered it. Here's how it works. Consistent generosity creates gratitude, but not dependency. Consistent withholding creates distance. But variable generosity, giving and withholding in unpredictable patterns, creates obsession. The toxic person never gives you enough to feel secure, never withholds enough to make you leave. They keep you in the zone of maximum investment with minimum return, hoping, waiting, trying to earn what should be freely given. This is manufactured scarcity in relationships. Notice the cycle. They're attentive, then distant, available, then unreachable, generous, then cold. And you start monitoring your behavior, trying to identify what you did to trigger the withdrawal, trying to replicate what earned the warmth. You're being trained, like a laboratory animal pressing a lever, hoping this time it dispenses the reward. The unpredictability doesn't make you give up, it makes you try harder. This is why intermittent reinforcement creates stronger behavioral patterns than consistent reward. They know this, maybe not consciously, maybe not with psychological terminology, but they know it works. They've seen you come back. They've watched you try harder. They've observed you accept less while giving more. Your defense: recognize manufactured scarcity. In healthy relationships, care isn't rationed, respect isn't conditional, presence isn't a reward for good behavior. If you find yourself constantly trying to earn basic human decency, you're not in a relationship. You're in a conditioning experiment, and you're the subject. The final principle for this section reveals the deepest truth. The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Translation: commitments are tactical, not binding. This is compartmentalization at its most ruthless. The toxic personality experiences what psychologists call moral flexibility, the ability to disconnect present actions from past promises, current behavior from stated values, inflicted harm from emotional consequence. They promised. They meant it in that moment, perhaps. Or they understood you needed to hear it. Either way, the promise served its purpose then. Circumstances have changed. You expecting them to honor it now is your failure to adapt. Watch this signature move. The complete absence of guilt. When confronted with broken promises, violated boundaries, or outright betrayal, they don't experience what you'd experience. No shame, no remorse, no internal conflict. Instead, justification, rationalization, reversal. You're remembering wrong. I never said that. You're being unreasonable. After everything I've done for you. They've already moved on emotionally. The cognitive dissonance you'd feel, they don't. They've compartmentalized the past version of themselves that made promises from the present version, breaking them. These aren't the same person in their psychological architecture. Never assume shared emotional investment. This is your critical defense. The care you feel, the loyalty you maintain, the promises you honor. Don't project these onto them. They operate from a different emotional economy. You think relationships are built on mutual obligation. They know relationships are built on mutual utility. When you stop being useful, the relationship stops being real. The pattern is clear now. These aren't random behaviors. These are systematic principles of exploitation, refined over centuries, operating beneath the surface of normal social interaction. And now you see them. Part 2. Advanced laws, affirmation, subscription. Fourth law, strategic cruelty. Before we continue, write in the comments one toxic behavior you finally recognized. Naming it strips its power. Machiavelli wrote something most people can't stomach. Cruelties should be committed all at once, benefits gradually. This isn't advice for the faint of heart. It's battlefield psychology applied to human relationships. The toxic person understands something fundamental about human memory and adaptation. We normalize pain when it arrives suddenly and completely. Think about the last time someone betrayed you without warning. The business partner who vanished with your investment. The friend who turned an entire social circle against you overnight. The romantic partner who replaced you before you even knew the relationship was ending. That wasn't impulsive. That was strategic. Here's the psychological mechanism. When cruelty arrives all at once, the victim enters shock. And in shock, people don't fight back. They freeze. They try to understand. They rationalize. They blame themselves. By the time you've processed what happened, the toxic person has already secured their new position. The damage is complete. Resistance is retroactive and therefore useless. Compare this to how they distribute benefits. Slowly, intermittently, in carefully measured doses. They don't give you everything you need. They give you just enough to keep you hoping. Just enough to make you think the next gesture might be the one that changes everything. This is intermittent reinforcement at its most weaponized. Slot machines use the same principle. The occasional win keeps you playing despite consistent losses. The toxic person's occasional kindness keeps you engaged despite consistent harm. The cruelty-benefit asymmetry serves another function. It prevents coalition building. When someone harms you gradually, you can warn others. You can build alliances. You can prepare defenses. When someone destroys you all at once, you're alone, disoriented, and discredited before you can mount a response. And here's the truly dark part. The sudden nature of the cruelty makes you look unstable when you try to explain it. They seemed fine with him yesterday. Now suddenly they're saying he's toxic. The abruptness of your reaction, which is actually a response to the abruptness of their attack, makes you appear irrational. Defense protocol. Maintain emotional reserves and exit strategies. Never become so invested in any relationship that sudden withdrawal would devastate you. This isn't cynicism, this is strategic resilience. Keep separate finances, maintain independent friendships, preserve your reputation outside the relationship, document interactions that feel off. The toxic person's power comes from your complete dependency. The moment you have reserves, emotional, financial, social, their strategic cruelty loses its paralyzing effect. You can absorb the blow, you can walk away, you can rebuild, and that terrifies them. Fifth law, fear over love. Machiavelli's most famous principle, it is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Most people misunderstand this. They think it's about being cruel versus being kind. It's not. It's about which emotion creates more reliable control. Love is voluntary. Love can be withdrawn. Love requires maintenance. Fear is involuntary. Fear persists without reinforcement. Fear is self-maintaining. The toxic person understands that anxiety-based loyalty is stronger than affection-based loyalty. Watch how they operate. They don't threaten you directly. That's crude. They create an atmosphere where you're constantly aware of potential consequences. The boss who doesn't yell, but whose silence means your project is doomed. The partner who doesn't argue, but whose withdrawal means days of cold treatment. The parent who doesn't punish, but whose disappointment restructures your entire sense of self-worth. This is ambient fear, a constant low-level anxiety that shapes behavior more effectively than any explicit threat. Here's the mechanism. When you love someone, you act to make them happy. But you can choose not to. You can prioritize yourself. You can set boundaries. When you fear someone, you act to avoid their displeasure. And this operates below conscious choice. It becomes automatic, reflexive. You start self-editing before they even enter the room. You anticipate their reactions and adjust preemptively. You police your own behavior more harshly than they ever could. This is the goal, to install themselves as an internal monitor in your psyche. They don't need to be present to control you. The fear of their response is present constantly. And here's why this works better than love. Love requires the toxic person to give something. Fear only requires them to withhold. Love demands emotional labor. Fear demands emotional absence. The toxic person has discovered the ultimate efficiency, control through withdrawal. You work harder for their approval precisely because it's scarce. You tolerate worse treatment precisely because you're afraid of losing access entirely. The psychology is identical to hostage bonding. The captor doesn't need to be kind, they just need to be the source of both threat and relief. Defense protocol. Refuse to operate from a fear baseline. The moment you notice you're acting to avoid someone's displeasure rather than to pursue your own values, you've entered their fear architecture. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to, or because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't? If the answer is fear, you've located the manipulation. The antidote isn't to stop caring. It's to care more about your own peace than their reaction. This is terrifying at first. Their displeasure feels catastrophic when you've been conditioned to avoid it. But watch what happens when you tolerate their disapproval without changing course. The fear loses its power. Their withdrawal becomes just distance. And distance, you discover, is actually relief. Sixth law, the appearance of mercy. Machiavelli wrote, "A prince must not mind incurring the charge of cruelty for keeping his subjects loyal." Read that again. It's more sinister than it appears. This isn't about being cruel, it's about making cruelty look like protection. The toxic person doesn't just harm you, they reframe the harm as necessary, as difficult but wise, as something they're doing for you, not to you. This is justified harm, and it's the most dangerous form of manipulation because it conscripts you into endorsing your own mistreatment. Watch the language. "I'm hard on you because I see your potential. This hurts me more than it hurts you. I'm the only one who cares enough to tell you the truth. You'll thank me for this someday." Each phrase performs the same function. It reframes abuse as investment. The psychological mechanism is narrative control. They're not just doing things to you, they're telling you what those things mean. And humans are narrative creatures. We don't experience events directly. We experience our interpretation of events. Control the interpretation, control the experience. Here's how this operates in practice. The partner who monitors your phone isn't controlling. They're protecting the relationship. The boss who denies your vacation isn't exploiting you. They're preparing you for leadership. The parent who isolates you from friends isn't possessive. They're keeping you safe from bad influences. Notice the pattern. Every restriction is reframed as care. And here's the truly insidious part. They make you grateful for the absence of worse treatment. They create a threat, often implicitly, then position themselves as the barrier between you and that threat. "You're lucky I'm patient. Anyone else would have left you by now. I could report this, but I'm giving you another chance. Other parents would kick you out. I'm letting you stay." This is manufactured mercy. They create the danger. They offer the protection. You become grateful to them for not fully executing the harm they invented. It's protection racket psychology. The mobster who offers to protect your store from the very violence he'll commit if you don't pay. Defense protocol. Recognize baseline manipulation versus actual respect. Ask yourself, what would this relationship look like if they weren't protecting me from consequences they control? Actual respect doesn't require you to be grateful for basic decency. Actual care doesn't frame itself as the lesser of two evils. Actual support doesn't make you feel like you're constantly being given chances. If someone's mercy feels like a favor rather than a baseline, you're not experiencing kindness, you're experiencing controlled cruelty with good PR. The moment you recognize this, the spell breaks. Their difficult love becomes visible as simple harm. Their tough truth becomes recognizable as strategic degradation. Their protection becomes obvious as the very threat you needed protection from. INCS, the master pattern, integration. These aren't separate tactics. They're a unified system. Psychologists call it the Dark Triad. Machiavellianism, Narcissism, Psychopathy. 3 traits that cluster together. 3 ways of viewing other humans as instruments rather than individuals. And here's what most people don't want to accept. These traits succeed in modern society. The Machiavellian rises in corporate hierarchies. The narcissist dominates social networks. The psychopath excels in high-stakes negotiations. Why? Because society rewards performance over authenticity, appearance over substance, confidence over competence. The toxic person has simply optimized for the metrics that actually matter in status competition. They're not broken, they're adapted to a system that values winning over being genuine. Your advantage isn't in becoming them. Your advantage is awareness without adoption. You now see the game being played. You recognize the patterns invisible to others. This is the paradox, understanding the game without becoming a player. You can identify their tactics without deploying them. You can protect yourself without exploiting others. You can be strategic without being toxic. This is the narrow path, and it's more powerful than either naive trust or complete cynicism. You're no longer blind, and that changes everything.